People are really bad at predicting when they will retire. At least that's what a recent study shows. And that's what our experience as financial planners has been as well. People rarely retire when they say they want to. Your financial planner asks you to pick a date when you're going to stop working. You're apprehensive because there's the messiness of the emotions of retirement, but then there's the complications of the math and the logistics of it all. And we tend to just want to put it off. Listen, let's take the pressure off. This recent study was done by Employee Benefit Research Institute, and it said that 50% of people say they want to retire after the age of 65, and yet 70% of those people retire between the ages of 62 and 64. So here's what we tell people who are dreading picking a retirement date, and that is, it doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. The answer is to just be flexible, and I would call that being flexible about your retirement or even a flexible retirement plan. You want to pick a date for logistical reasons, but you want to know that it's probably not going to come to pass completely as you think. So let's be prepared if we have to retire earlier, since so many people actually do. I'll give you an example of 3 different retirees. Retiree number 1, Walter, says he's going to retire in 2022, but right before he retires, he's offered a project that he's wanted to do for his entire career. And so he decides to continue on. And here we are in 2024, and he just got retired. Then you got retiree number 2, Stacy. She says she wants to retire April of 2023 because that's when her bonus hits. But partway through the year, she feels like she wants to create a greenhouse in her backyard for when she's retired. So she decides to work that extra year to capture that extra bonus. And then sadly, retiree number 3, Susan and Richard, they're both the same age. They're going to work 5 more years. Richard comes down with a health issue, so they both retire so that she can stay home and take care of him. So the study that we're talking about today reveals that we're really bad at planning when we're going to stop working for various reasons. People feel relieved when they realize that there's 2 parts of the plan. There's the emotional side of the plan, and then there's the math side of the plan. And what we have to get right is that going into retirement is not signing up to go on a cruise where you just show up. It's more like going to live in a foreign country where you need to study the culture, you need to make some plans. There's a little bit of thought and education that goes into it. We don't want to just show up at retirement like we would getting on a cruise ship. So I'm going to give you 3 things you can do to start to be flexible about your retirement plan. But first, if we haven't met yet, I'm Nick Davis, founder of Brindle and Bay Wealth Management. We're here in Texas. We help people all over make peace with their financial plan so that they can retire with calmness and clarity. If you like this content and want to see more of it, please hit that subscribe button. Thanks for that. So we're talking about how most people overestimate how long they can work or will work. And the majority of people end up retiring a few years earlier, at least, than they had planned. So what happens to you if you can't work as long as you wanted to, and you need to, exit that profession, that career a couple of years earlier than you thought? When you have a retirement plan that's flexible, you don't have to retire early, but you could if you need to, and that's the beauty of it. So here's 3 simple things you can do. The very first thing is to discover the earliest that you're willing to retire. This means balancing your savings with what you're willing to spend in retirement. We always ask people to find the balance between what they're willing to spend in their lifestyle and the earliest they can afford to retire. And you want to document this in a 1-page financial plan, and it often looks like this. John retires at 67 with a $125,000 lifestyle, or 63 with a $110,000 lifestyle. Your goal may not be to retire as early as possible, but knowing that you can retire is the goal of a flexible retirement plan. It's being flexible about when you're going to stop working. The second thing you can do is create your financial narrative, and this just involves getting organized. I talk a lot about having your individual financial story, your narrative spelled out, and this involves tallying up your accounts, discovering how much you can spend from your investments, because then you can begin to ask some of these important questions like, how much can I afford to spend at a certain age in retirement? We need to look at how much our investments can generate for us in income. We need to look at Social Security, timing of that, when we're going to turn that on for ourselves or our spouse, and things like that. If you haven't done this, I'll leave a link in the video description for a video I did on the 1-page financial plan, and you can check that out after this if you want to take a look at it. But part of being organized is just knowing that you have realistic goals. You want to make sure you can cover your healthcare throughout retirement, that you've thought about vacations and Christmas and fixing the AC. And the third thing is equally important, and I can't emphasize this enough, and that is to practice retirement. What are you going to do with your time? How are you going to fill those hours in the day? What's your social life going to be? And the big one is where are you going to derive meaning from? This requires some thought. It requires some journaling, some vision creating. It's a transition. Just like when the kids left the house, it was a new environment. All of a sudden you don't have somebody else in your house and it's quieter and things changed. It's going to be very similar to that. Flexible retirement plan is just about being ready in case you have to retire earlier than you planned. So a couple of practical things you can do when you're trying to practice retirement. The first thing you can do is you can actually practice living on your budget for a month. So if you have a retirement budget in mind, try to live on that budget for the next month. You can also schedule new things to do. We ask people to think about how you're going to spend your time before they come to that next planning meeting. And a lot of times people will say something interesting. Recently, somebody retiring this year said that he wants to take classes to learn to write short stories, something he had never done in his profession. And she wanted to become a master gardener, something that was not close to anything she's ever done before. So maybe you schedule some new things so you can start to have a new environment to be involved with besides just work. And another thing we like to do is encourage people to take 2 weeks off of work and don't go on vacation. Just spend your time doing the things you would do when you're retired. I know it sounds wild to be close to retirement and to then take 2 weeks off and not take a vacation, but that's an investment you're making into your future. One family who did this recently said they were surprised at how busy they were running errands and taking grandkids here and there. So I'm curious to know how many people watching this have planned on, or maybe you already have practiced retirement, taking some time off, exploring what it's like. Or are you planning on just doing it cold turkey and just showing up and then having this new experience just kind of thrown on you? Let me know in the comments.